All right, everyone, thank you for joining this debate between Secretary of Domestic Affairs Rohanistan, who um, yeah, uh, acting, and current District 7 Representative McCann. Uh, I would like each candidate to give a 1 minute introductory statement, which will be timed. Uh, excuse me, a 2 minute introductory statement. We will start with the incumbent representative, Mr. McCann. Please give us anything you'd like to start with, like maybe your policies, maybe um, anything else you'd like to speak about in your introductory statements to introduce yourself to the American people. You have 2 minutes.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. First, I want to thank my opponent, Secretary Khanna, for being here to for the second debate, and thank all of you at home for watching. Over the last 2 weeks or so, I've been fighting every day to make sure that our government works for the people. Unfortunately, because of the actions of few individuals, we have been able not been able to do everything that we need to do. Um, that's okay. Not everybody does everything that they're supposed to do their term. But my job has been to try to make sure that our government is working for you, the people. And I can stand here right now and say that we have a broken government. And we need somebody who's going to be there to help try to put this government back together. We've seen the issue of severe political partisanship. We've seen right now in this House alone where partisanship can lead you, and where if you get a grip of power, that it's hard to let go of, but you can only let go of it when the House has to vote. I've also seen the effects of sitting during budget negotiations and not everybody always agreeing on what the budget should be like. Uh, these are things that we have to think about every day. As of now, my House term, this term, has been committed to ensuring that our government works for its people. And I can assure you this that if I'm reelected for a second term, the legislating will continue. The first things first, we need to pass our budget. Once we get our budget passed, that is when the legislating can begin, because you cannot pass meaningful legislation that needs funds when you don't have a budget. So that is my commitment that we're going to get a budget passed. The legislating is going to begin. And the first thing I'm going to do when we are able to begin to legislate, when we have our budget, is to pass a cancer research bill, which is going to put more money towards cancer research, which we know that cancer faces. Everybody has known someone that has dealt with that issue. That's going to be one of my first priorities. So I look forward to talking about the issues that actually matter in this debate. And I hope I can earn your vote. Thank you.
All right. Your timing it has been comfortably fit in within the 2 minute mark. Mr. Rohanistan, please give your own introduction. You have.
I I'd first of all like to thank my opponent, Mr. McCann, for being here and challenging me to this debate. And I'd like to thank everybody here, especially the president, Mr. Long. I think that I completely agree with Mr. McCann that this is a broken government. I think that it does need some changes, and I have always stated that I will work for the people. I have worked for the people as Secretary of Domestic Affairs. Unfortunately, most of my plans have not been passed, uh, which has stunted my possible involvement in helping the people, but I will not give up because that is not how I roll. This is my third time running, and it is probably not going to be my last, but that's just because I care a lot. I really don't see why after one loss I should just quit. There's no if I'm gonna quit, then I didn't deserve it in the first place. You have to keep going. You have to keep rolling. You have to take every block in the road and find a way around it, and then get to the next one so you can get around that. So you can help your people, make sure that they are living their best life they can. That is your job as in working in government. You have to work for the people. And unfortunately, that has become a lot more rare that people in government are working for the people. They seem to be working for themselves, big super PACs, or Wall Street, etc., etc. I think that needs to stop. That's why I'm running, because I feel as if I am the best choice to lead and not be corrupt in today's climate. Thank you, and I yield.
For your introductory statement, both, and Mr. Rohanastan. So I'd like to ask you both. Now we'll start with Rohanastan. I started with Mr. McCann first. I will ask him what exactly, what legislation you plan to propose in the House of Representatives if you are elected, and how exactly will you aim to unite our government and make sure our government works better? You have 1 minute. Every candidate will have
Well,
1 minute.
I've always stated that I am against partisanship. I think that working together is the best way to get things done. I've always been for a few issues, like raising the minimum wage to at least about $10, and also my two plans to help farmers as Secretary of Domestic Affairs that both got shot down in the House. I will repropose them because they are important in helping the lives of the farmers around the country as the backbone of our society. And I think that working together is the best way that we can unite. And I mean, if we don't unite, then it's just going to be a constant fight, and we're all going to be just fighting and fighting, and nothing is going to get done. And that is not how we need to go at this. We need to go united. We need to get things done, and we need to work for the people. Thank you.
All right, you have spoken comfortably. Mr. McCann, can you same question? Do not understand the question.
I'm sorry. Can you speak up just a little bit? We can't.
Oh,
All
all
right.
right.
Yeah,
Mr.
you're a little
McCann,
quiet.
can you answer the same question that I asked Mr. Rohana? Or repeat it?
Go ahead. Repeat. Can you repeat your question for me, just so we can be
All
clear?
right. So Mr. McCann, what do you plan to propose in the House of Representatives if you are elected? How do you plan exactly to unify our government and make sure it is good? It is not bad to repair it. How do you plan to do that? And how do you plan to what are your first pieces of legislation proposed in Congress? You have 1 minute to respond.
Question. Let me also welcome our second moderator, Mr. Walker. Let me comment on this first. First things first, as I've said in my opening statement, the first thing we're going to do, as soon as everything's done, is get this budget passed. Because, quite frankly, as you know, Matthew, you've been in government long enough to understand that a lot of the things that you want to get done, you can't because you need funding for it, and you can't get funding if you don't have a budget in place. So that's going to be first things first. We're going to pass the budget. I'll be sure of that. Number two, like I said in my opening statement as well, we're going to pass a Fighting Cancer Act. We're just going to appropriate funds towards cancer research, furthering cancer research. That is something that's near and dear to my heart. And it's something that I believe is going to be a very utmost importance that we pass to make sure that we are just funding cancer research and ensuring that we could try to get a cure for that. The third thing I want to try to get done, well, really the second bill, is the Equality Education Reform Act, which will expand access to computer literacy, music, and arts education, and will also allocate funds for the improvement of security at elementary and secondary. Excuse me.
The time
Okay, and
spoke.
finally
Sorry.
improve the overall quality of education. So, if my opponent is not
All right.
opposed to it, would you be willing to
Walker
put
has spoken.
in the 30
The timing
seconds,
has
please?
elapsed.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
The timing has elapsed. I apologize, but your timing has elapsed since
But my
Mr.
opponent
McCann.
and I, if we feel that we agree to a minute and 30 seconds, which I don't think my opponent is
Oh, all
opposed.
right, all right. Okay, let's
I'm not
let's
opposed
do
to it.
this again, over again. All right, let's
Okay.
do this over again. So, what timing? What would be an ideal time to for the people to speak at?
A minute 30. 2 minutes.
A
I
minute
think
and
would be good.
2 minutes? So 2
minute
minutes.
30 to 2 minutes. I
It's
mean,
going to be a minute. It's going to be a minute and 30 seconds. If you don't like it,
All
then
right.
leave the debate.
Well, I
Minute
was
30 seconds.
all right. A minute and 30 seconds. Okay, we agree on that. I think we can move on now. Mr. Walker, you're feel free to ask your first question.
Okay. The first question is gonna have to do with the economy. Please let me know if you can't hear me because the connection's a bit iffy.
hear you fine.
Okay. Economic sanctions have often been used by the US and other countries in attempts to alter the behavior of target countries. These sanctions typically include general or selective trade embargoes, restrictions on foreign investment, and restrictions on travel and to and from the affected country. The question is, are economic sanctions effective in altering a country's actions? And should they be implemented more often by the United States? Why do you think they should be implemented more often, or why do you disagree with that premise?
That direct.
Question goes to Mr. Khanna. Your time starts now.
I think it's more of a case to case basis. I think with some cases like mistreating workers, then yes, you should implement sanctions to stunt the economy of other countries. However, I think that there are sometimes a little bit too harsh of economic sanctions. However, I do not think that they should just be wiped out of process. They definitely should be used at some points to punish countries. I mean, we shouldn't just trade with everyone. I mean, that would pretty much be promoting a lot of very harsh and frankly awful working conditions in places like China. That there's I
So you
have
would
heard.
impose. So it would be open imposing sanctions on China.
Yes, I would. I mean, in like not every single sanction ever, but I think that they do need some economic sanctioning as they do mistreat workers a lot.
What about Saudi Arabia? Do you think they deserve sanctions?
That's a good question. I do think that too. I think actually Saudi Arabia more because of how they treat who not just workers but people in general, especially women, and their mistreatment does deserve some sort of penalty. Economic sanctions aren't the worst idea.
Okay, Mr. McCann, do you agree with what Mr. Khan just said?
For the most part, I think that he brought up a few good points, especially when it comes to the issue of basically how they're treating the workers and also human rights violations as well. In terms of your question, I'll get to your question about sanctions, especially against Saudi Arabia. In 2018, I don't know if people remember this, but the Treasury sanctioned 17 individuals for their roles in the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, which was I believe, was the journalist that was killed in Saudi Arabia. When you have countries that are acting in a way that the United States does not condone, um, there should be some type of sanction against them. But we don't want to sanction them to the point that we are constantly agitating them. For example, if we constantly place sanctions on China, guess what? China is one of our biggest trading partners. If we continue to sanction them and place tariffs on them, only God knows what's going to happen with our economy, since that's where a lot of our stuff comes from. So we can't we go down that route, but we also can't do it to the point where we're going to be on the brink of a trade collapse and economic collapse of our own if we can constantly and continually go down that particular route. But for the most part, no real major disagreements on my end.
I apologize for the interruption, but I need to leave. I will give Mr. Sethi, Justice Sethi, the second my spot as a moderator. So, Mr. Sethi, feel free to ask any questions. I no longer be a mod enough. I need to do some work.
All right,
Thank you.
Julio.
Michael, so everything's taken care of. Thank you, Matthew, for your service. Take care. Goodbye.
Yeah, that.
Okay.
Okay, Sethi, do you have any questions, or should I continue with my next question?
I can ask a question. Mr. Rakanistan, what is your position on increasing or lowering taxes?
I think that there are some. I think I would be up for raising taxes on the rich because they are definitely too low taxed, in my opinion. I think that tax cuts have become a little bit too prevalent, so I don't want to really cut taxes or tax breaks. I would just like to tax the rich more so we can spend more money on programs that could help poor people and also eliminate tax havens like Delaware and Cayman Islands, I believe. I might be wrong on that one, but because those are a very big win, I guess you could say, for the rich. There's a building in Delaware that has like 285,000 companies registered to it, and it's literally like 2 floors. It's not a big building, but it's registered so many companies because it's a tax haven and they don't have to pay any taxes. So they can just, do everything that they do without having to give a fair share to the government. And I think that that should not be allowed. Thank you.
Sethi, do you have any follow-up?
I answer
Yes,
that question?
I can ask another question.
Can I respond to that question, Sethi, real quick?
Yeah, you probably should ask him that too.
Yes. I'll ask
Yeah.
you the same question then.
I do want to comment on that because I think that's an important thing that my opponent just brought up was raising taxes. Well, let's talk about taxes, shall we? Let's first talk about the estate tax. As you know, in this community, we have an estate tax. If you make above $1 million, your tax rate is 40%. Basically, taxable amount is 40% of $1 million. Let's talk about federal income tax. 38% for people who make, for single individuals who make above $519,000. For married individuals filing for joint returns, 622,000 or more. We can talk about raising taxes on the rich, but again, with the current tax rates that we have, if we go any further in raising taxes on individuals who make $622,000 and up, what good is that going to do us? Because then you have to reshuffle the tax brackets, and you are at risk for an individual who is making, let's say, $40,000 to $85,000. If you increase taxes, you're going to have to knock that person into another tax bracket, which means is not only are you going to be raising taxes on the top 1% of individuals, you're going to be raising taxes on the middle class individuals as well. And how can you raise taxes on wealthy individuals without raising taxes and putting other people like a single mom who may be making, let's say $40,000 a year without putting her in another tax bracket to pay more in taxes? That doesn't, to me, make sense. I think the current tax, especially for the federal income tax, I think that makes sense where it is. And I stand by the current budget that we put together for our tax brackets.
Thank you. Mike, you can now ask your questions to the candidates.
Okay, thank you. Next question relates again to trade. The anti-sweatshop movement in the U.S. and other industrialized economies has, in recent years, attempted to use consumer boycotts to eliminate sweatshop working conditions and child labor in less developed countries. Unions and college student groups have been leading the drive for sweatshop boycotts. The question is, does the anti-sweatshop movement help or harm developing economies?
I'm guessing
It goes
I'm
for
going
Mr.
first.
McCann first.
Okay.
All right. So basically, to answer that question of hurting developing economies, of course it does. But if you are breaking laws, then at that point in time, uh, it's not about your economy. It's about you broke laws. And especially when it comes to child labor laws. And now I don't know what child labor laws are like in any of the other developing nations. But what I can say is that if there is child labor laws are broken, then of course at that point in time it might hurt your economy. But at the end of the day, you kind of messed up. So uh, yes, it hurts the economy. It hurts their economy. But at the same time, if people are boycotting it and you've clearly done something wrong, then that's a you problem and more so not a them problem.
Okay, Mr. Khan.
I'm pretty much in agreement with what Terrell said. I mean, it's definitely going to hurt their economies. However, it's also a major human rights violation, and I think that I value human rights over the economy any day of the week. I think you have to like realize what these countries are allowing to be done to their youth, and it's hurting them, and it might even hurt their development as people, hurt the country, and it's really sad that it still does exist, and it still is a problem that there are children who are going out to work instead of getting schooling and learning how to read and write and all of that. So, like, of course, it'll hurt their economy, but I think you still need to look at it as a major human rights violation.
Asa.
Yes. I would like to ask Mr. Turan, what is your policy on sending more or withdrawing troops from the Middle East?
I don't think I necessarily agree with withdrawing troops from the Middle East. We are there to help try to stabilize the region. And if we're supposed to be that middleman there, who's to tell what's going to happen if we leave? We're trying to be there to help stabilize the region. So there is no policy on my end for withdrawing troops from the Middle East. If there becomes an issue where we need to do so, that is going to be a decision made by the President of the United States, as well as with his Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State, I would hope. But as of now, as a House member, I don't think that I directly have direct uh, influence on that decision. However, my personal opinion would be we leave them there. They're there for a reason. And if we need to pull them out, I hope that the president and his foreign affairs team will determine that for themselves.
I would like to ask Mr.
Here,
Vokanistan a similar question.
Can I answer that question real quick?
I'd like to ask you a similar but different question.
Okay, well,
if
I'm just
com-
gonna answer can I just answer the question that you asked him?
Okay then.
Alright, well, I pretty much have the same response to that. There's no, there's pros and cons on both sides. First of all, yes, we are there to stabilize the region. However, wars have been dragging on, and it's really kind of, it's getting kind of like pointless. Not really pointless to try, but like it's getting really, really long, and it maybe even too long. It's like there's a point where I think that we should just realize that we've been there for a while, and we have to try and find a different way than just fighting over it. I think that we might be near or even at that point now.
Let me ask you then my other question. If conflicts were
Okay.
to flare up with Iran, would you support a war?
I mean, I don't think you ever really support a war, but I mean, if it gets to the point where we need to be at warfare, then yes, I would support a war. I mean, usually I'd hope that we can make peace. I want to make peace. But if it gets to the point where they're like trying to attack us, then yes, I would be in complete support of trying to attack them back.
Thank you.
Let me follow up on that question. Do you support a similar bill that was proposed by Elizabeth Warren, pretty much pledging that the United States will not be the first one to strike in the event of a nuclear threat?
Yes, definitely. I
Mr.
just
For the most part, I think I would agree with that. Yeah, that's much the standard I would expect the United States to conduct themselves, is that unless we're fired at first, we should not be the initiator of an attack.
Okay. My next question is related to healthcare, and this is directed towards both of you. Do we have a moral obligation to provide healthcare to everyone as needed, or is healthcare a commodity that should be subject to the same marketplace influence as other commodities? Who went first last time, but
I think you went. I don't know.
hey,
I'll just-
well,
I think
Mr.
it's
McCann.
I think it's the secretary's turn. I think I
Okay,
went
well,
first.
I'll just go first. I think I think that it should be a right. I mean, I don't think that we should be denying people healthcare. I mean, I don't get why I really kind of find it weird that it's a debate that people think that people shouldn't have healthcare. I think that you should most definitely. I mean, healthcare prices are way too high, and I think that we need to solve that so like people can have better access to healthcare. I mean, it should be a human right. I mean, sad that some people don't think it is. I mean, treating you when you're sick or when you hurt your leg, I guess, that should be just something that you can do. I mean, of course, you'd still have to pay, but like, you shouldn't just be denied healthcare, in my opinion. But I don't know. Some people, I guess, think that it isn't.
Okay, what policies would you pursue in order to make healthcare a right and not a commodity?
I am not sure at this point. Um, but I guess if it came to it, I would maybe support Medicare for all. I've said it before. It's not like I'm not 100% a supporter of it, but like if
Why are
it
you not
came,
in 100% support?
if
What reservations do you have with the plan?
I'm very worried that it would be way too expensive to. I mean, just it's a very expensive plan, and it is. I mean, it could probably work, but it is kind of it's very expensive. Is basically my main concern with Medicare for all.
Okay, Mr. McCann.
The issue of healthcare, as we know, is a loaded topic in itself. Let's talk about this for a second. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Pretty much, what I would say is that um, people should be able to get healthcare if they want it. Now, I personally think that people should have healthcare, and especially health insurance, because if you've seen price of health insurance lately, if you've seen the price of medicine, if you've even looked at a hospital bill, you would know that it is expensive. What I support is a public option. People, if you cannot afford to pay for any other private healthcare insurance, you will be able to enroll in the public option. You may still have to pay your monthly deductible, of course. We can talk about how to get that to a reasonable price when we cross that bridge. But I just personally believe everybody should be able to get healthcare if they want it. If an individual cannot qualify for the healthcare they want, they'll be able to be put into the public option. But here's another thing in terms of Medicare for all. Yeah, you know, many people say, well, it's going to be a feasible plan. Okay, how? How do you? This is another issue. How do you implement Medicare for all without raising taxes? How do you implement Medicare for all without knowing how you're going to fully?
Again, your time has expired.
Yeah.
I would like to ask Mr. McCann, does he believe that the current education system within the United States is working for US students? And if you believe it does need reform, what policies do you support in order to improve the quality of education?
All right, that's a good one too. So in terms of, it's good we jump from healthcare to education. Next thing we're going to know, we're going to be jumping back to healthcare. Let's talk about our education system for a second. Personally, I can tell you from a Ohio standpoint, I believe that we do need to take steps to ensure that we are basically ensuring that every child has a quality education, which is why I support school choice. I support education freedom. If you feel that your child is going to get a better education at a private school, you have the right to send them to a private school. If you think that they are going to fit better in a public setting, a public high school setting, you're able to do that. I can't speak for the entire district, but I think that education is a state by state issue. But one thing I can tell you is that I am going to be working with Representative Pittman, who is here. Hello, Representative Pittman. Good to see you. And we're going to work on a school choice education bill. And we're going to be able to ensure that people have school choice. And also, like I did mention, pass the Quality Education Reform Act, which again will expand access to computer literacy, music, and arts education and allocate funds for the improvement of security as well. So I think that our education system right now can be reformed. We're going to take the steps necessary to ensure that they are reformed. And we're going to have to go, though, by a state basis because the federal government cannot and should not dictate what school is like in every single district because that is, again, a state issue.
Same question to you, Mr. Rakanistan. Do you want me to repeat it?
No. I think that I agree. It's a probably state by state basis. I support school choice, but I'm not 100% in support of funding private schools through government funding. Because I think that as somebody who does go to a public school, I think that funding could definitely be used a lot better here, considering that. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, my school is pretty filthy. It's definitely it's not clean, really, and I think also teachers are not paid enough. I think that's also a big issue. I also I support Mr. McCann's quality reform bill because I think that you should probably have more access to music and arts and computer literacy, especially in today's world where a lot of things are used by technology. I mean, we're probably all using technology to be on here. So I think it should be important that we know how to use it. I think there's definitely a lot of ways to reform it. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a state by state basis, but it definitely is needing of reform.
I would like to ask an additional question to both candidates. Start with you, Mr. McCann. Do you believe that the policy from the Bush administration, No Child Left Behind, has been a success, or do you think it has failed?
Overall, looking at the No Child Left Behind policy, I personally am not going to say that it was completely successful. As you know, personally, I think that if a child is not ready for the next level, then that's going to be a parent's decision to make if they feel that their child is not ready to move on. But what I think, and I think I'm going to go back to your question before. I believe my opponent talked about not funding private schools. You may not fund private schools, but I don't think that the best way to try to fix a broken education system is to try to flush the education system with cash. I think that's a terrible thing to try to do. Overall, the No Child Left Behind policy was not implemented, and it was not overall a good policy in the beginning. I don't think that it is really benefiting our children right now, and we have to look at the effects of it and how it has played out since then. But overall, I would not say that the No Child Left Behind Act was not a good policy at all.
And to you, Mr. Rakanistan, the same question.
Yeah, I agree with Terrell on that. I don't think it was a great act. I also think that parents should have the choice to have the choices to have their child go to whatever grade they want. It's just that simple. I mean, there's really not much to it. It just wasn't a great policy at the time, and I understand the criticism to it. Still isn't a great policy. Really nothing much to it. Not didn't do what it was, or it did do what it was supposed to do, but it isn't. It's just not a good idea. It's not a good platform. It's not overall a good bill.
Okay, well, I'm going to stay on the topic of healthcare here. According to a study in the Journal of the
So we're talking about
American,
education. How do you go back to healthcare?
I do whatever I want. Do you have a problem with that? You can leave the debate.
Yes, I do, Michael. Fight me right now.
Well, you can leave the debate if you have a problem with that. I'm going to
Money's on
continue
Terrell.
with my question.
There'll be order.
According to a study in the journal, according to it, are you going to continue interrupting me, or can I ask a question?
That's the question.
According to a study in the Journal of the American Medical Association, nearly 40% of physicians have manipulated reimbursement to receive for those who receive needed care. For example, physicians have exaggerated patients' symptoms to allow them
Mr. Walker, you
to
broke up.
stay in the hospital longer and charge patients.
Is he cutting out for anybody else?
Yeah, I can't understand.
Yeah, I can understand.
Yes, Mr. Walker, your audio seems to be breaking up, so I guess in the meantime I'll ask a question related to healthcare to both the candidates.
Okay.
Do you both believe that the veteran? Do you both believe that VHS should receive additional funding, or do you believe it should be moved to more of a privatized system in order to meet the more marketization?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh yes, we can hear you. Please return to your question.
Kinda, but you're still cutting out.
How about now?
We can hear you now.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Michael.
Okay. I'm going to continue with my question. I'm going to repeat it again. According to a study in the Journal of the American Medical Association, nearly 40% of physicians have manipulated insurance reimbursement for those who receive needed care. For example, physicians have exaggerated patients' symptoms to allow them to stay in the hospital longer and changed patients' diagnoses for billing purposes. In our current healthcare system, is this justifiable or unethical? If it's unethical, what will you do as representative to discourage this type of behavior? That goes to Mr. Rakanistan first.
I went first last time. But whatever. I think it's unethical, and think it's definitely worth punishment, as it's definitely very greedy and, I mean, as we said, unethical. It's definitely, it's kind of sad just thinking about that. 40% have apparently done this, and it could be more. It's a good possibility, and that's just kind of, it's not a great thing to be able to hear, and I think it definitely deserves some sort of punishment. And I would definitely like to work with other representatives on that to see what their opinion is on it. But I definitely think that it's unethical and should not happen and should be punished for just the safety of American people.
What punishments would you be open to consider?
You're straight. I 100% understand you.
What punishments would you consider?
Well,
What policy?
Okay, I think I understand what you
What
mean.
policies will you? Oh, you can hear me now?
Yeah, I think I got your question. Like, I think the punishments that I would be open to would especially be more fines over jail time, because I think that this, I mean, it's a really bad thing, but I don't know if it's worthy of jail time. I think definitely, again, I think that it would be a good thing to work with other representatives on and decide, but definitely it could be well-sized fine. And I mean, depending on what everybody else says, maybe even jail time. I wouldn't be 100% for that, but I mean, if that's what other people are wanting, then I will be in support of it.
Okay, Mr. McCann, the same question goes to you.
All right, thank you, Michael. So here's what I'll say. First of all, to answer that first question, yes, we all know that that is unethical. What steps will I take the steps that I'll take as a representative is to ensure, one, that there is an investigation into that particular said doctor. So if Dr. George Smith is accused of, I don't know, putting a different diagnosis than what it actually is, there should automatically. Excuse me, I was interrupted. There should automatically be an investigation into that particular doctor. They should be placed on leave without pay. And if it is concluded that said doctor did such a thing, um, then in the end, they should be held accountable and not be able to have a medical license. And if it comes to that, to determine if there should be jail time done, then that is what should be done. But overall, an investigation should be done. The doctor during that investigation is placed on leave without pay. And if it is concluded that that doctor violated code of conduct and acted in an unethical manner, their medical license should be revoked. And if jail time is needed, then that is what will be done.
Yes, I have a
Okay,
question.
thanks.
Oh, sorry. Do you have any additional questions?
No, I don't have any follow-up.
No. I have another question related to healthcare to both the candidates. Do they believe that the VA, the Department of Veterans Affairs, has been successful in its mission goal of providing healthcare to this nation's veterans, or do you believe that the system should be replaced with a more privatised system to ensure veterans receive medical attention? I'll ask this to Mr. McCain first. McCann.
What's your question again, Seffi? I'm so sorry.
Do you believe that the Department of Veterans Affairs has been successful in its mission goal of providing this nation's veterans with healthcare, or do you believe they should receive a more privatised service?
Overall, I would say that when we have the VA, overall, I think that we are doing a decent job thus far in treating our veterans and ensuring that they're getting quality health care that they need. After all, they put their lives on the line for us. and the least we can do in return is to ensure that they have quality education. Excuse me, not education, healthcare. It just shows up how tired I am today. So overall, I think we're so far doing a decent job. We can probably go a little bit farther. And if we look at what's going on with the VA, and if we feel that they should be entitled to a little bit more, then we'll take the necessary steps to do so. But overall, I would say that we're doing a decent job taking care of our veterans. We just have to make sure that that they're getting the necessary health care needed, and that they're getting the medical attention that they need.
Mr. Rakanistan?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to respond to Terrell saying that he's tired. Me and you both. And also, I also think that they're doing a decent job. And I especially think that it's good that, I mean, I think it's good that we have a thing, because as Terrell said, I mean, they put their lives on the line and serve and protect the United States of America and keep its people free. I would also like to try and combat veteran homelessness a lot more, because I personally have met veterans who were at the time homeless. And I don't like know personally any homeless veterans, but I do know veterans in general. My grandpa was. Oh, you're not muted.
Christian. County.
But okay, I'm just gonna quickly finish. I personally know that my grandpa was on a submarine when the Cuban Missile Crisis happened. And so obviously, I think that veteran protection is a very good thing that should exist. I do think that the VA has done a decent job. However, I think they should also focus a lot on veteran homelessness. Thank you.
Kathy, do you have a follow-up?
That was my last question around healthcare.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask the last question on healthcare, the debate, I guess. This goes to both of you. Should employers be required by law to offer health insurance to employees? That goes to Mr. McCann first, if he's available.
Yes, simply yes, they should be required to offer health care. I think personally, and I can attest to this, my grandfather, who was put out of work because of the coronavirus pandemic, he lost his job. He was not able, and see, this is going back to the issue of healthcare, which is where we need to fix our healthcare system. He's not able, once he lost his job, he was not able to keep his medical. Now he's struggling. Overall, I think yes, they should be required to ensure that their employee has healthcare, but they should also make sure that at the time that employee should have healthcare just for, even if it's like a transition period, once they leave that job, helping them find another healthcare coverage system, rather than just leaving them out to dry. So overall, yes, I support that, and I think that's part of what needs to be done.
Okay, and if this were to be implemented and made into law, what role would a possible public option be? Would you still support adding a public option, or would you simply expand Medicare and Medicaid, given that employers would be required to give out health insurance to their employees? How would a law that would require employers give healthcare to their employees alter your view on healthcare?
Well, Michael, I think it's rather simple. If at the time, again, with the current system that we have, they'll be required to give them health care, but we also need to think about the ones who were not offered health care once they left the job. So we have to take into consideration, okay, so if we have an individual who has healthcare plan A, but they leave job A, okay, you leave job A, now you are struggling to find healthcare. That's when that public option comes into play. If you are not able to get the healthcare that you needed when you were working, you can be enrolled in this public option, which will also help ensure that you still have some type of medical coverage. It may not be the same medical coverage that you had, but at least it'll be medical coverage. So that way you're not out to dry, leaving you out to dry, and you'll at least have some type of healthcare coverage. It doesn't really alter my view. I just think that that's the way that it needs to go. That if an individual leaves job A, that they will have that healthcare until there's the transition period between them leaving employer and then trying to get a decent healthcare plan following leaving the job. Because if you know this, you know you're not going to be able to keep the same healthcare once you leave that job, and if you go to another job, or even if you don't go to another job, you still need to have some type of healthcare coverage, especially when you are taking different medications as well.
Okay, Mr. Rukanistan, do you need me to repeat the question?
Yes.
The question is, should employers be required by law to offer health insurance to their employees? If so, how would such a law being enacted alter your view on implementing a public option, a single-payer healthcare system, or even expanding Medicare and Medicaid?
I am also in support of health insurance being a requirement for employers. I think that as I said, healthcare should be a human right. I think that offering it as a requirement to employers would be a big step forward. I think that a lot of people lean on that health insurance from their employers, considering the high medical prices of today, and I think that it should be a requirement. And to answer the second question, I think that also getting a public option would stay for the same reason as Mr. McCann, just like for people who are unemployed. I mean, if you don't have a job and then you get into, let's say, a car accident and you need to go to the hospital, then you would still have you would still have the option to pay with the that system, at least to help you. And I mean, it would still, just so you, like, people who are out of the job can still pay for their medical bills while also still being able to, live off of whatever they still have while trying to find another job.
Yes, I will do the next question. I'm moving the topic. I believe this is a question relevant to the district that you are both vying to represent. Do you believe the federal government should supply farmers and the agricultural industry with such heavy subsidies and benefits? I will ask this to Afghanistan first.
100%. Illinois is a very farmy state. As someone who lives here, I can confirm that it is mostly farms, and then Chicago. And yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that it's definitely. I mean, I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Farmers are the backbone of our society. They're literally they're pretty much what keeps us going. I mean, without farmers, we would have a lot lower food supply, and a lot less food would make food more expensive, which would make it harder to get, which would overall hurt the population of not just the United States, but the world. So yeah, I think that they should be given benefits and subsidies to keep their farms going. Because, I mean, they're a very, very important part of society as a whole, and pretty much one of our biggest food sources. So yeah, that's, I think.
Mr. McCann?
All right. So in terms of subsidizing our farmers, absolutely. Again, I agree with the notion that our farmers are the backbone of this country. Look, if you go about, I would even say, um, especially in Ohio, if you go outside of the city, and you're, driving, say, to Sandusky, which is, I would say, I think it's about 100 miles west of Cleveland, you're going to see farmland all the way there. Okay, that's how big agriculture, a bigger role agriculture plays in our district. What I think needs to happen is, yes, they need to be subsidized. Yes, we need to be helping our farmers, because also our farmers are helping us when it comes to trading, especially bushels of soybean and crops with different countries as well. Without our farmers, we would be in a terrible situation. And I think the best thing for us to do is to treat our farmers right, and ensure that they are able to sell their crops, to be able to sell their meat, everything that they need in order to really be successful. So that's pretty much a yes.
I would like to ask both candidates as well, would they support a European-style common agricultural policy? That is the idea that the government will purchase a certain amount of food from every farmer, but in order to maintain market prices, farmers have to destroy excess or surplus food produced. Mr. McCann?
Sorry.
I would have to look into that. I'm not ready to sit in a debate and say yes or no to something that I don't know a whole lot about. I'm not
Come
gonna.
on.
Yeah, he's back. I'm not gonna be able to definitively say yes to your question or no to your question. I will simply say we'll have to look into that, and we'll have to look into what that policy involves. So overall, right now, I'm not able to sit here and say yes or no to that particular question.
Okay, I'll go now. I think based on I know a little bit about it, and I think that it's a good besides the destroying surplus. I think that could be sold at a lower rate with government help with subsidies to increase our food supply, which is needed in the rising population of not just the US but the earth. But besides that, I mean, I can't really give you much of an answer either. I think it's a good policy that needs some amending. But yeah, I don't really know 100% much. I don't know 100% about it. So that's just kind of me based on my general knowledge of it.
Well, more of what I was getting at with the question was, do you believe agricultural subsidies and quotas should be done on a federal level, or do you think it should be more of a states issue?
Federal.
I think to me, this is one of those issues you leave up to the state.
And yeah, maybe that. But I mean, I think that it should I just think the subsidy should be there. Probably the main goal for me. It might be a better idea to actually put it up to the states thinking about it a little bit more. But I think that it's probably an idea to consider and come up with an answer later on. But I think subsidies are definitely needed.
Thank you. Mr.
I will also say, before we get to his next question, I would just also say too that the federal government should not be involved in everything in your daily lives. We need, that's an issue again, dependent on the state, because some regions are more agriculture friendly than others, which is why I say that you leave it up to the states and let the states decide that issue. Because if we leave everything up to the federal government, then we're going to be in an even bigger mess than we're already in, because the government interferes in too much as it is. So that's why I say leave this particular issue up to the states and allow them to determine that issue for themselves.
Okay, well, do you have any follow-up, Seth?
That's all I wanted to know on agriculture.
Okay, well, I have another question on agriculture. This goes to both of you. Farmers could take, some consider that farmers could take an active role in not only mitigating climate change, but making their operations more resilient in the face of extreme weather events by adopting sustainable and agroecological practices, such as farm-wide use of cover crops. Yet the current system of crop insurance incentivizes large-scale monocropping, resource-intensive farming practices. What would you do to change the federal crop insurance subsidy incentives towards a more sustainable agricultural practices? I believe that's for Rokanistan first.
Well, I thought I went first last time. Can you repeat the question again? I didn't really get it 100%. Sorry.
Okay, I'll repeat the question. Okay. What would you do to change the federal crop insurance subsidy incentives in order for them to promote a more sustainable agricultural practices?
Okay. Well, I think just giving out subsidies to farmers who are uh using better environmental processes would be a start, maybe a good idea. I'm really not 100% on this issue, so I think it's kind of like the last issue of Ceci's question that I'm not 100% sure on it. So uh, I'm just gonna say that I think I do support like subsidies for farmers who are uh, using better environmental processes. So.
Okay, Mr. McCain.
I think for the most part, we're pretty much in agreement here. It's not one of the things that we know everything about. Of course, I'm not a farmer, so I don't know every practice that they do and everything that they do. But for those who indeed take a more environmental friendly approach to how they do things, no matter how that might be, then they should be subsidized. But you can't really comment on something that you don't know a whole lot about, which is one of those things where not everybody knows everything about the issue. But for the most part, I think that's pretty much that how that goes. You don't know everything that they do, so how can you comment on? Back to you, Michael.
Um, I will
I don't
ask.
know if he's there.
I will ask my question then. I'll be moving off the topic of agriculture, and I'll be moving to something a bit more fun. Do you support the president's executive order which created Space Force? Or do you believe that this should be left more down to the civilian agencies of NASA and space should not be a military theatre? I'll ask Mr. McCain first. McCann.
Well, the president of the United States has taken his position very clear that he thinks that the United States should be invested into basically space exploration. If that's the case, then I believe, and if I believe the president's executive order is sustainable, I think that that's the route we should go down. We've heard this is not a new idea of having a space force. I think that the Department of Defense and NASA should work together on that particular issue. But overall, it's not a necessarily a bad idea for space exploration. And overall, I think we have already, if I'm not mistaken, have already put funding towards the president's initiative for the Space Force, which means is that we are going to pass funding for the Space Force. So overall, I don't think space exploration overall, which is what I believe the president's going for, is necessarily a bad idea. And I hope that the Department of Defense and NASA work together on that one instead of just one take control and the other sit back and watch. But overall, I think the president's idea was a good idea, and Congress is putting funding towards that initiative.
Okay.
My turn now. Yeah, I kind of agree. I think that I don't know if it's the most 100% necessary thing, but I do support it. I also have been very supportive of just NASA space exploration and things like a mission to Mars. I think is a very good goal by the end of his term or the end of like the start of whoever his successor's term is, to not have a mission but to have a distinctive plan for a mission to Mars and missions to the moon again. However, I think I don't know if it's come down to the point where we need a space force yet, but I mean I think it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad idea, is what I think of it, and I support his decision to create it. Is how I'm feeling right now.
Mr. Walker, are you there?
Doesn't appear to be.
Okay, I guess I'll continue on my questioning of space. What do you believe about private space exploration, and do you believe that corporations should be leading the charge and potentially start claiming land which UN treaties have forbidden nations from owning? Do you believe there should be a new UN article or treaty to stop the ownership of anything off the earth by any private company or individual?
I go first. Yes, I do. Space is not ours. This planet is ours, and space shouldn't be ours yet. I do support, private corporations trying to be in the mix, but I don't really support them leading the charge. I think that should be up to the government. And as I've said, I support space exploration, and I think it should happen. However, I'm not 100. I don't 100% think that they should be exactly leading the charge, and I definitely don't think that anyone at all should be claiming land that is extraterrestrial at all. I think that's just. I don't think that should happen. I mean, it's pointless, and should not. The space shouldn't be ours. Is basically my point.
I would say I would agree. I think that our Department of Defense and NASA should be taking on that role, leading the charge for further space exploration, not corporations. Of course, if corporations feel that they know better than the government do and think they can do better than the government, and then by all means waste, go ahead, put your own money towards it. But I think they shouldn't be leading the charge. That should be left up to a government of which we have already set up a department, the Space Force, a branch of our military, to do such a thing as well. I don't think they should be leading the charge.
I'll ask a very contentious question now. A few years ago, we saw horrific sights at the border, many would agree, when immigrant children, some illegal, many, were put in cages and separated from their parents by ICE and Border Patrol. I'm asking both of you candidates, what is your policy on ICE?
I'm not for abolishing ICE. I think I was before in our last debate, and I think Mr. McCann was very, very passionate about this issue, but I'm for strong border security. However, I don't think that putting kids in cages and separating them from their families should ever even be close to a thing. I support stronger borders. I don't support open borders. However, I do think that there should be a pathway to citizenship for immigrants who are trying to get across. To get them. They want a better life, and they should not be torn away from their children and have their children put in cages like they're some sort of zoo animal, because they're not. They are human beings who deserve better, much, much, much better than to be put in a cage just for trying to cross the border and have a better life. I support stronger border security, and I think ICE should be a part of that. However, I don't think they should be. I think they should be regulated more. I mean, I don't know 100% how, but I think somebody else should be in charge of housing immigrant children and just immigrants in general who are trying to cross the border for a better life.
Mr. McCann?
Sethi, are you trying to start a riot in here? I'm just,
I don't think he was at our last debate.
you have, I'm just saying, Seth, you're trying to start a riot in here. The Democrats are present. But let me say this, because I'm glad my opponent has changed his stance since the last debate, because the simple fact of the matter is we have a crisis at our border. And in the last debate, my opponent supported the abolishment of ICE, which, again, if I must bring up the statistics, which I think I will since we are here, on a daily average, and this is just not for my opponent who formally opposed, who was formally in favor of abolishing ICE, but to all those who support abolishing ICE. Again, and I'll read you the statistics that I just read last week: 4,000 pounds of narcotics seized, 87 criminal arrests, $4.93 million illicit currency and assets that are seized. 6 victims are identified. 284 administrative arrests, 335 detainers issued, 509 removals of criminal illegals, and 12 gang members, of course, also removed, about 3.26 million immigration cases managed. I think the facts speak for themselves when it comes to the issue of ICE. ICE is not going anywhere. We're going to up our border security. That means we're going to increase funding, put technology on our border, put more agents on our border to ensure that people are not crossing the border illegally. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. If you want to come to our country, you have to come here legally. We have a process that is set up for a reason to come here legally. I support ensuring people that have a pathway to citizenship. I think me and my opponent agree here. But for us to just open the door and say, oh, yeah, come right on in without doing any type of background check or any of that, I think that's going to be a very important issue to take care of. So overall, I support beefing up our border security. That doesn't necessarily mean, we need to use the word wall, as my opponent tried to put it last debate, but we need to have some type of updated barrier between the United States and Mexico to try to help alleviate some of that illegal border crossing. And even those who want to come here legally, again, you have to come here legally and you have to do it the right way. And in terms of separating children at the border, I do not support that initiative. I do not support family separation at all, or even keeping kids in cages. But however, if you don't know what to do with illegal immigrants, you can't, let them run loose. Which in the last debate, again, my opponent also did not know what to do with illegal immigrants that were detained by the United States. The current system we have to try to fix it. But that's pretty much all we can do at this moment.
This is a question related to the last and specifically targeted at you, Mr. McCann. I would like to hear your answer. What is your position on sanctuary cities? Because you seem to be someone who does believe in municipal and state rights. So do you believe that these sanctuary cities should be allowed to exist?
Sanctuary cities, again, if a city and if that state allows that particular policy, then that's on them. It has nothing to do with me at that point. That's the issue. If the state allows that to happen, then the states can have that. I advocate for states' rights. We have that in the 10th Amendment that, all of the rights belong to the states. So sanctuary cities is an issue of the state of the cities and the states, and they should be left up to the states.
I'm sorry, I don't think I actually got across the point I was trying to make. I was trying to say, should the federal government send in ICE detention units to cities and states which have clearly refused their presence, yet the federal government does anyway? Do you believe this violates the states' and municipal rights?
I think if we have a situation, well, let's put it into perspective, because then you can use a supremacy clause here. If we have a federal law that allows for this to happen, to go into an area where the state may have said no, we're not allowing you to do this, but there's a federal law that says that they can do so, then obviously federal law states trumps state law. That's pretty much that. Overall, again, it just depends on the policy, and it depends on what the policy is. If it feels that if there's a federal law that says they can do so, or if they have a warrant for even the arrest of these individuals as well, then you can't necessarily try to go against something that is already mandated. So I hope that pretty much answers your question.
Thank you. Mr. Rakhanistan, do you care to answer the question?
I guess I'll just make a quick comment that I can you just restate the question, please? I just want to hear it again, just so I can be 100% sure.
In summary, effectively,
just what you just asked him.
Oh. Do you believe that ICE should enter sanctuary cities or states, even if the states or municipalities have made it clear they do not want ICE presence?
No, I don't think they should. I think the states have made it clear that they shouldn't have. And if I'm not confused, I think this is actually a good issue for us, considering I believe Chicago is the biggest sanctuary city per the term. But I mean, I guess if they have like a warrant, if it's like somebody who's violent and has a violent history and from wherever they came from, then I guess. But like, I don't think they should just be coming in and taking them out. I mean, I think if they don't want ICE there, then they shouldn't have to have ICE there. I mean, I think that should be the state's or the city's decision.
Can I ask what time was this meant to end? Is it any time soon?
Nope, we don't have a set time. We just kind of go on and go on
it will
until
be
we're done.
soon.
Michael's back.
Sure.
Good. Mr.
Oh,
will be
Michael's back.
soon.
Yay. Sure, that I guess. I don't know.
Okay. One last question on immigration, and then we'll go to. I don't know if Sethi has any more questions. Do you have any more questions, Sethi?
I have one last question for the entire debate, but that's it.
Okay, well, I have two more. I'll go first, and I'll let you go, and then I'll do the last question, and then we'll go to closing statements. My question related to immigration is the following. How will you ensure that DACA recipients and TPS holders, that's over 1 million people across the country, are able to continue living, working, and thriving in their communities? What will you do to protect more than 500,000 U.S. citizen children? How will you, let me restate the question, how will you ensure that DACA and TPS holders continue to live in the U.S. and contributing to their communities without fear of being prosecuted? And do you pledge right now that you will find a pathway to permanent citizenship for these individuals? That goes to Mr. McCann first.
Absolutely. DACA and TPS recipients are people that they're contributing to their local communities. They are making their communities a better place. Absolutely. We're going to ensure that they are able to continue their daily living especially those who were brought here as children by their parents. As a child, you have no control over your living situation at all. Excuse me. And so we're going to ensure that, again, DACA recipients and TPS recipients are able to stay here without fear of deportation, without fear of prosecution. And that, again, in that particular situation, that is not their fault. They were brought here as children. And so what we can do is to ensure that they have a pathway to citizenship, permanent citizenship, and staying here. But overall, yes, I support ensuring they have an overall pathway to permanent citizenship here in the United States, especially those who are being good contributors to the community and to our country as a whole.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rakastan.
Yeah, I agree on that. I think that they're contributing to their local community and they should not be sent out. And I also do 100% pledge to establish a permanent path to citizenship for people who have DACA or TPS. Because I mean they're already contributing. They should not be. They should be allowed to not, especially as Mr. McCann said, especially people who are brought here as children, but they should be allowed to stay here as they're contributing to their local community. I mean, they're not violent, they're not doing anything wrong, really, that should justify deportation. I don't think that it should really be that hard. I don't think it really should be that they should be deported for anything. I mean, I think that they should, I mean, again, they're just contributing to their local community. They're helping people. They're not doing anything that should justify anything, so they should not be deported. And again, I do pledge to establish a permanent path to citizenship for holders of DACA and TPS.
My question is regarding the use and practices of private prisons. Do you believe that the US government, specifically the federal government, I should make clear, and ICE and agencies like ICE and departments like Homeland Security or the Justice Department should continue to use these private prisons to incarcerate the nation's population?
Who goes? I think I go first, so I'm just gonna go. No is a short answer. These prisons are held. They're really not helping people. Prisons today seem to be more about punishment than rehabilitation, and that's not something. I mean, that makes it more likely for people to reoffend if we're gonna keep using private prisons. I think that private prisons should definitely not exist in today's climate, especially. I think there's at least 1 million people who are in jail right now, and they're being. I mean, they're definitely not. They should not be held in private prisons because they are not serving them enough justice to help them and rehabilitate them, and they seem to be more about punishment, which is definitely, instead of helping our society, it's definitely hurting it.
Well, then by that measure, would it be a fair assessment to say that then you do away with all prisons then? Because if we're going to take it to that level, that sounds like something that happens in all prisons, not just private prisons. So would that be a fair assessment to say that at that point, then what you're proposing is basically doing away with all prisons, because it's not just private prisons that's happening?
No, I think that private prisons, I think that we should abolish them because it's a lot harder to fix them, and I probably should have stated that, but I think prisons that are government owned should be, it would probably be a lot easier to fix, and a lot of private prisons, it's not gonna change anytime soon. I mean, I think that it'd be a lot better to try and get government-owned prisons and try and rehabilitate those, because I feel like it would be it would be easier to do that. I mean, I understand the concern, but I think that it just be a lot more easy, because I mean, businesses are not exactly known for their record of serving the public 100% well. I mean, they're not 100% trustworthy to be able to rehabilitate, is basically my point, and I think that it'd be much easier to rehabilitate in government-owned prisons.
But what if we have people who are rehabilitating those in the government-run prisons? What about having them do that in the private? Because if they're contracted with the government, wouldn't it be necessary to say that they bring those, if it's about rehabilitation, that you can do that in both the private sector, private prisons, as well as the government-run prisons? Even though, again, what I believe is that this belongs, judicial punishments belong to the state, and of course, state-run prisons. But overall, if this is the circumstance, don't you think that, again, it would be fair to say that if it's about rehabilitation, that government prisons are not doing a good job at rehabilitating people either? Because the point of prison is to, for them to be rehabilitated and to eventually, depending on what the crime is that they're there for, to try to make them become good and productive citizens of our country. That's what I'm really trying to get at here.
I think that it would be. I think that I understand what you're saying, but like the issue is that they're the private prisons rehabilitating, and they're not trustworthy enough to just start, in my opinion. I mean, I think that it would be easier to change government-run prisons than to try and get private prisons to just change. I mean, maybe that's just me, but I do think it would be easier to have rehabilitation in government prisons be reformed than in private prisons.
This would be my last thing I say about the particular topic at hand. Look, I think that you can make the argument that private prisons are unethical since, again, judicial punishments belong to the state. But also, if you're going to make the argument of, well, in the state-run prisons, they do a better job at rehabilitation, that may not necessarily be true. You may be getting better rehabilitation in a private prison than you may be in a government-run prison, which is why I'm saying at that point, the argument that you would be making is that we need to simply do away with private prisons, not because it's unethical, but because of the fact that they aren't basically being rehabilitated as well as they would be in a federal government-run prison, which is something that I don't necessarily agree with you on, because it may be just as worse in a government-run prison than it is in a private-run prison, which is the point I'm trying to make. But to Michael, we go.
Okay, this is the last question. Then after this, we're going to go into closing statements. The last question has to do with the Supreme Court. Recently, the Senate rejected SCOTUS nominee Michael Walker, and some individuals have expressed concern over this vote. Mr. McCann particularly said, quote, "By far, this confirmation process was the most unethical sham I've ever seen since I've been in politics. And if they really wanted to know the truth about his knowledge, they sure as hell wouldn't have done what they've done to him." Do you think that the SCOTUS is overly politicized? Do you think that the Senate vote was made purely of a political motivations, or do you think it was done ethically and it was done the way that it was supposed to be carried out? That goes to Mr. McCann.
I assume that goes to me, Michael. Is that what you said before you cut
Yeah,
off?
you said it goes to Mr. McCann.
Well, I stand by my press conference earlier today. Look, I've known SCOTUS nominee for a very long time, having conversations with him about the law. He understands what the laws of our country are. He understands the Constitution. He understands how to interpret the Constitution. In fact, in the old community we were in, he was on the Supreme Court. I think that his knowledge is not questionable, which is why I think that this nomination process, they waited for God knows how long to even have a hearing. Then they have a hearing. They don't ask the questions that they're supposed to be asking or that they need to ask because a lot of the questions were not very good questions to begin with. So overall, you make this nominee wait for God knows, I think maybe almost 2 weeks, even to have a confirmation hearing. And if you have doubts, you don't even express your doubts to the nominee. You just go ahead and vote no. I think that's a problem in itself, which is why I am basically for the American people to oust their senators who did not give this nominee a fair shake. I believe that, Michael, you got the short end of the stick, and they know it. And what troubles me is that there was only one senator who I disagree with on a lot of things, but the Senate Majority Leader only had the spine. He had the spine to actually vote yes because he didn't base it off party affiliation and he didn't base it off of who the nominee is, but he based it off the nominee's knowledge and the nominee's ability to carry out the duties of the office of which the nominee would be entering. Which is why I made the statement that I made. I support my statement. And I think that that was overall the most unethical sham that I've seen since I've been in politics.
Okay, Mr. Rokanis.
Quite a. Never mind. I'm gonna agree with him here. I think that it was not great, and I also do think that the Supreme Court has been over politicized. The Supreme Court should be about upholding justice, should not be about politics. Shit. And I think that it's worrying that it is so much, and that I mean, like I think it says a lot that only one senator voted for it. Just I mean, probably based on party. I mean, even though I'm not ideology-wise the same as Mr. Walker, I would have voted yes for him because I mean he does have a good knowledge, and he deserves to be on the post, or not the post, the court. And I mean, of course, I think it was unethical. It was probably a sham, but I don't like that. It's weird to me, so I'm not gonna say it anymore. But I do think that it was not a great hearing, and it was not a great result, and that it should be undone, and Walker should be confirmed.
Oh, well, I'm so salty about that. We're gonna go over to the closing statements. Mr. McCann, you go.
Thank you,
I
Mike.
actually believe Rokana goes first. I went first on opening statements.
Yeah, you
Okay,
did.
well then, Mr. Rokanis.
Okay. America, I've always, and I will always say that you should never give up. And I will never give up on you. And I think that it would be wrong to just give up on the people. I mean, I think that is why I have ran. That is, I have ran 3 times. I believe that the people are serving the people is the big reward. Making people's lives is the reward. And I don't like how it seems like it hasn't become about serving the people. It's become about serving your own values. I want to work with any Republican or Democrat or other independent to further and better the lives of my constituents and people around the United States, as I have said I will, and I will try my best, and I will make sure that I'm doing everything that I can to further the welfare of the people, as that is my job, and I will make sure that I am doing it for the people and with the people. Thank you. Also, thank you all for being here.
Mr. McCann?
Okay, Mr. Mc.
Well, I'm going to read something yet again that I did this last week, but just to reiterate it because you can't hear it enough. And that is the preamble to our nation's document, our preamble of the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. We, the people. So right now we have a government that is supposed to be about the people. But instead we have politicians who rather play politics than actually get things done for the American people. The government is not about playing politics. It is about doing things for the people and getting things done. And when we have this partisan divide where one particular party and individuals want to seize power and take power, inherit power, and try to keep it, I mean, it's ridiculous that we have gotten to a point where that people are so power hungry that they would try to hold on to power for as long as they can, even though the people had already voted. We have seen over this past week what our government truly is and what it isn't. And I believe that we need to continue to work towards that goal of a more perfect union. We have to be able to work across the aisle to get bipartisan things done. Last time I checked, healthcare is not a partisan issue. Last time I checked, it is not a partisan divide when it comes to taxes. It is not partisan to think about ensuring that people don't go hungry at night. This is about ensuring the general and promote the general welfare for our people. We have a representative that is going to do that. I stand by things that I say. I stand by my policy positions. And in the end, you may not like me. You may hate my face. You may hate my voice. You may even hate my. But the one thing I can tell you is that I have a job to do, and I am going to do that job regardless of what people say. And I hope that in this debate it has made it abundantly clear that we have a representative now who cares about you, who wants to do things for you, and who will ensure that we have people who are supporting and defending our Constitution and doing things for the people. So I hope and pray that you make the right decision in this upcoming election. We have elections for a reason. And so I do hope that I can gain your vote. And I hope that you vote to have 4 more weeks of prosperity and ensure that we have an agenda that is going to be for the people. And I look forward to serving as your representative again for 4 weeks. Thank you. May God bless you, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. God protect our troops.
I would like to thank all the candidates for coming here today. I think it went very well.
And Logan, that's cut it.
Well, dismissed.